Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. When you look at a football pitch, what do you actually see? Just a bunch of grass, right? Some chalk lines, maybe a bit of mud? Well, the greatest tactical minds in the history of the sport don't just see a field of play. To them, it's a giant chessboard. It's a cognitive grid where space, time, and geometry literally dictate victory. So let's dive right into this, because today we're going to look at football not just as a physical contest, but as a fascinating mathematical equation.
And that brings us to the really big question we're answering today. How exactly do modern football giants completely dismantle those highly structured, stubborn, parked bus defensive walls? Now, why this matters to you, whether you're a casual fan tuning in on Sunday or a diehard analyst, is because the exact DNA of the dominant modern champions you watch every single weekend, teams like Pep Guardiola's Manchester City or Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, well, it's directly inherited from a deeply fascinating historical lineage. We are going to decode the very matrix of modern football.
Here's our tactical chalkboard for today. We'll start with the birth of total football, check out Johan Cruyff's legendary 3-4-3 diamond, break down the four tactical superiorities, look at the science of positional play, and then wrap up with the biggest tactical debate in the world right now, positionism versus relationism.
All right, Section 1, the birth of total football and the manipulation of chaos and space.
To really understand why this was such a massive revolution, we kind of have to understand the problem it was trying to solve in the first place. Back in the mid-20th century, defensive setups like Italy's famous Catenaccio relied on incredibly strict, static man marking. It was rigid. To break that, a revolution started in a really surprising place. The roots actually lie in the 1910s with a visionary English coach named Jimmy Hogan. The English football establishment basically shunned him. They hated his focus on technique, short passing, and versatility because they preferred long balls and brute strength. So, Hogan took his ideas to the continent. His teachings heavily influenced the famous Austrian Wunder team of the 1930s, who used this dynamic Austrian whirl where players constantly interchanged positions. Fast forward to the 1970s, and we see Rinus Michels at Ajax take those exact foundations and forge what we all now know as total football.
And sitting right at the absolute center of Rinus Michels' system was this man, Johan Cruyff. Cruyff basically became the high priest of this romantic, fluid era. In total football, if a defender pushed forward into the attack, a midfielder dropped back to cover. Attackers defended, defenders attacked. Cruyff himself, even though he was technically a center forward, would drop way deep into the midfield, pulling his man markers completely out of position and creating these vast open pockets of space for his teammates. The whole team functioned like a living, breathing organism. They would expand the pitch to make it as absolutely wide as possible when they had the ball, and then compress it into this suffocating trap the second they lost it.
Moving on to Section 2, Cruyff's 3-4-3 diamond and redefining the tactical grid.
When Cruyff transitioned to managing Barcelona in the 90s, he took this fluid system and evolved it into something much, much more calculated. The crucial turning point here is perfectly captured in this quote from Cruyff himself. Listen to this, it's brilliant. He said, "If you have 4 men defending 2 strikers, you only have 6 against 8 in the middle of the field. There's no way you can win that battle." You see, Cruyff viewed the football pitch as a mathematical problem. Playing with a standard 4-man defense against 2 strikers meant you had 2 redundant, completely useless players at the back, which left you mathematically outnumbered in the midfield. And for Cruyff, losing the midfield numbers game was just fundamentally unacceptable. So how exactly did he solve the math? Well, he created the famous 3-4-3 diamond. Step 1, he sacrificed a defender from the traditional back 4, leaving just 3 at the back. This still gave him a 3 versus 2 numerical superiority against the 2 opposing strikers. Step 2, he pushed that extra man up the pitch to form a diamond in the midfield. And Step 3, this allowed him to use a central pivot, a holding midfielder who just sat perfectly central and commanded the entire game, providing endless passing triangles. Fun fact. Actually, maybe it's not a secret anymore, but a young Pep Guardiola was one of the players who executed this pivot role to absolute perfection for Cruyff's Barcelona. And this diamond right here laid the foundational framework for the tiki-taka style we all know today.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 4 tactical superiorities, and breaking down the framework.
Cruyff's structural tweaks eventually evolved into what we call positional play, which relies on 4 very specific tactical superiorities to completely dominate a match. First up, numerical superiority. That's just overloading a specific zone with more of your players than the opponent to guarantee easy passing. Second is qualitative superiority. This means shifting the opponent's entire defense over to one side, only to quickly switch the ball to the other side to isolate your fastest, most skilled winger in a one-on-one against their weakest defender. Third is positional superiority. Having your players receive the ball between the opponent's midfield and defensive lines, so they're facing forward with time to think.
And finally, the most magical one, socio-affective superiority. This is that telepathic chemistry forged through thousands of training repetitions. Just think of the historic connection between Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba at Barcelona. Messi could play a blind, diagonal ball into open space, knowing with absolute 100% certainty exactly when and where Alba would be running. And that brilliantly illustrates one of the absolute most vital tools used to achieve these superiorities, the third man principle. Imagine player A has the ball and wants to pass to player C, but an opponent is standing right there blocking the lane. Instead of forcing it, player A passes to player B, who immediately bounces the ball to player C. Because the defending team's eyes naturally follow the ball from A to B, player C basically becomes invisible. He becomes the free third man. He is suddenly the most dangerous player on the pitch. It's essentially a tactical cheat code to bypass pressure entirely.
All right, Section 4, the science of positional play and Guardiola's ultimate grid.
So now we reach the modern era. We shift to the manager who hyper-calculated this Dutch legacy into an ultimate grid, Pep Guardiola. A lot of people mistakenly think Guardiola's teams just play possession for possession's sake, like they're just passing to look pretty. That is completely a myth. Juego de position is a rigorous, incredibly aggressive offensive framework. It literally divides the pitch into a cognitive grid of zones. It's not about keeping the ball for fun. It's about forcing the opponent to constantly react to your structure, dominating space and time so completely that the opposition's defensive block just inevitably fractures.
And to do this, Guardiola imposes incredibly strict spatial rules on his players. First, a maximum of 3 players can occupy any horizontal line, which keeps the team stretched vertically. Second, a maximum of 2 players in any vertical channel, stretching the opponent horizontally. Third, players must maintain exact distances of 10 to 15 meters to ensure the ball can travel at optimal speed. And finally, the rule of 3. A player with the ball must always have 3 passing options, period. These axioms ensure that the ball moves significantly faster than human defenders can actually shift their weight and change direction.
Finally, Section 5, the modern debate. Positionism versus relationism.
But, football never stops evolving, and a brand new philosophical battle is brewing globally right now. On one side, you have positionism. This is the structured grid we just talked about. Predetermined zones, automated movements, highly calculated. It's the school of Guardiola and Arteta. On the exact opposite side is relationism, championed by managers like Fernando Diniz in Brazil or Carlo Ancelotti at Real Madrid. Relationism just throws away the rigid grid entirely. It relies on fluid, player-driven, close-quarter combinations. Players will spontaneously group together on one side of the pitch, solving problems dynamically through sheer intuition and raw talent rather than predetermined zonal math. It's totally organic versus engineered.
Which brings us to a really exciting middle ground. The lineage of the Dutch masters, from Michels to Cruyff, definitely continues to shape the modern game, but it's adapting. Look at Xabi Alonso's recent tactical synthesis over at Bayer Leverkusen. He has brilliantly blended the structural, mathematical buildup of positionism with the relational, free-flowing attacking freedom in the final third. He proved that the legacy of the Dutch masters isn't just some museum piece. It is a living, breathing, tactical foundation that is still very much evolving today.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Where is the future of football actually heading? Does it belong to the strict, calculated grid of the past decade, or the fluid, spontaneous relations of the next? Or perhaps some beautiful synthesis of both? I'll tell you what, the next time you watch a match, try not to just follow the ball. Watch the geometry. Look for those diamonds, those third-man runs, and the invisible grid governing the grass. I promise you, it completely changes the way you see the beautiful game. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your eyes on the pitch.